Hi, everyone. Welcome to Interchange. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us once again. Good stuff to talk about today. You're going to like the conversation, I guarantee it. Of course, we'll talk about the Supreme Court and Obamacare and what happens now. We'll talk about the fight shaping up at Palermo's Pizza in Milwaukee between the workers and the owners. And we'll talk about the likely decision next week to rip down the old historic Sydney Hih buildings in Milwaukee. All right, let me introduce everybody. We have longtime newspaper columnist Joel McNally. Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, and oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. Denise Callaway, community affairs and public relations professional. And Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, a big win for President Obama this week when the Supreme Court decided by one vote that his universal health care plan is indeed legal and constitutional. Mitt Romney promises to begin repealing it the day he's elected, he says. But if he's not elected, what happens, Kevin, in the months and years ahead? Do you see a government-run, socialized medicine plan for the United States?
Well, unless Mitt Romney and the U.S. Senate flips, unless Mitt Romney is the next president, that could be. There's going to be major changes, and it's going to have a tremendous impact on consumers. There will be 21 new taxes imposed, and small businesses will be impacted. The economy will be hurt because you take hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe up to $1 trillion, out of the economy and give it to the government. That will affect jobs. That will affect the economy, and there will be an uncertainty amongst employers who may strongly resist taking on new hires. I was flabbergasted, honestly, at the turn of events. No one saw this coming. No one saw. No one saw the Chief Justice going over with the 4 liberals on the court, and I'm just again stunned at the rationale he used. It's not a tax, but in the end, it is a tax. It is the law, but you can break this law as long as you're willing to pay the penalty, i.e., a tax. This thing could have been dead yesterday. Mm-hmm. Instead, some people are saying that, you know, if Chief Justice Roberts is dumb, he's dumb as a fox, because now he puts this in the laps of the American people, who may wind up killing this via Congress. So I think what politically, while it's a major victory for the president, there's no doubt about that. However, I think it will be short-lived, because what John Roberts did by punting now, by saying this is too hot of a potato, I will punt. What he has done is he has removed the High Court as a scapegoat. Just listen up, you'll get your shot.
You gotta quit talking sometime and give us a shot.
All right, I'll be quick. Maybe 20 more seconds. Justice Roberts removed the High Court as a scapegoat. The president can't say, well, they picked on the little guy, they picked on the uninsured, and he has left the president in an unenviable position of having to admit that he broke a promise, because he said this is not a tax. He said over and over and over again.
15 seconds, you're out.
I didn't know there was a time limit on us.
I didn't know there had to be.
There is. We only got 30 minutes.
Now politically, it's tough, because he's going to have to campaign on a tax increase, an unpopular act that 2 out of 3 Americans don't like.
Good golly.
Does this help?
I hardly know where to start.
Does this help the president politically in the next 5 months?
It helps the president tremendously, because it helps the American people tremendously. You have people who are already seeing the impact of what's happened now under the Affordable Health Care Act. You're seeing people who are denied insurance because of pre-existing conditions really not being in that situation. Some healthcare companies are already making those changes and decisions. And it's particularly important, the provision that takes a look at those children under the age of 19 who could be denied coverage under their parents' plans, that's gone. Those of us who have kids and children who are under the age of 26 have the ability to stay on parents' plans.
It's made a
huge difference. It's made a huge difference in terms of, and this is what people don't talk about as much, but if you know anybody who's over the age of 65, it's huge. It has closed that donut hole that was driving our senior citizens into bankruptcy, because they would either have to find a way to pay through running up their credit cards or selling their homes
Thousands
to
of
pay for these expensive drugs, thousands and thousands of dollars. It has provided a safety net and the security that we would expect our older folks to have. The president has repeatedly said nobody in this country should go bankrupt because of health care. And that's what this does. I think when we step back and take a look at this decision which was made may be the equivalent in terms of providing a right of health care and the right to be healthy to the American people may be as important as Brown versus Board of Education was in terms of making sure that young people were not denied the option of a quality education because of the color of their skin. And what Justice Roberts did was not being smart like a fox. He didn't side with the liberals. If you take a look at this decision and other decisions he's rendered, where he's been on,
just amazing.
I'm still trying to catch up with you, where he has been on the side of the quote liberal side of the court. What the justice said and what he's been doing is to rule in, not as an activist judge, not as a liberal, not as a conservative, but to say, I understand what the parameters of this court are, and the parameters of this court are not to legislate, and we're not going to do that.
Last week when we were talking about immigration, you said Obama didn't push that issue because it was the political thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. Do you feel the same thing about this?
Oh, absolutely. And everything that Denise said is absolutely true. And actually, one thing that Kevin said was true.
Actually, everything
is
he said was true.
is that this act was almost dead. We could have lost the move towards universal health care. We could have lost covering pre-existing conditions. We could have lost what Denise said about Medicare and the donut hole getting closed for seniors. We could have lost all of those things. And it was that close. And it's amazing to hear conservatives now attacking Judge Roberts because he endorsed this decision. And I think he clearly wanted to be on the side of history, not on the side of Republican partisan politics.
He said it's not. He said it's a bad policy.
You're done, okay? And the other thing, just let me say this.
You should be happy.
I am happy. I'm very happy. I'm very happy with this decision. But let me point out one more thing, which I think this also explains Judge Roberts' position. He has a pre-existing condition. This is very personal to him. If he weren't a justice on the Supreme Court, he could not buy health care under the previous system. Anyone who's ever been in that position, and I'm such a person, I couldn't buy health care, under an old system, unless, someone was forced to cover me. Anyone who loses their job, and in this economy and all the horrors we've been through with this economic crisis, people have lost their jobs right and left, and then cannot buy health insurance because of pre-existing conditions.
Is Romney just talking, or is there really any chance, if he was elected, that he could turn everything back?
Yes.
Nonsense.
I believe that that's what's going to happen, because now the dynamics of the election have changed. If the Republicans are successful in tying the bad outcomes of this law, and it's bad in the sense that we can't afford it. We don't have the money to pay for Social Security now. We don't have the money to pay for Medicare and Medicaid now. The states actually won because they don't have to be saddled with the additional burden on the cost for Medicaid. But if he can tie this notion that Roberts fortunately gave to him by writing the decision himself and calling it a tax, that this is an additional tax burden on the American people, I think you're going to see all of the anti-tax activists out and supporting killing this bill, repealing this bill. Then they can come back and address in a proper manner those issues that have been talked about, like affordability for young people, those who have pre-existing conditions and the like. But I think this is going to be the issue in the election tied to the economy.
Who would have been protesting it, who've been protesting it
not with the same fervor.
I think so.
Not with the same vigor. Absolutely not.
This awakens the sleeping giant. And Denise, guess what?
You're done.
You're done.
So are you.
Thanks, Tom.
Not for long.
Palermo's Pizza has been a hugely successful company, received boatloads of positive publicity the last few years when it built a giant new plant in Milwaukee's Menominee Valley close to the unskilled workers it would hire. Now, the company is embroiled in a media nightmare with an immigrant group trying to help unionize the place and more controversy over the legal status of some of the immigrant workers. Somebody's getting a raw deal here. Is it the company or is it the workers?
How about workers who have no right to take sick leave? These are workers that are handling food. Do you want to force sick workers to go to work handling food, creating food that's going to be sold all over this country? How about the people working for that plant who have lost limbs, and the plant has been fined by OSHA for illegal lack of safety? How about being threatened with deportation if you try to unionize? There's a whole bunch of just grievous things going. Talk about, when we talk about immigration issues, one of the things we talk about is how, people who are immigrants to this country can be taken advantage of by employers. These workers have the right to unionize, the right that every American has to unionize, and that's what they're doing, and that's what they're trying to do, and the company has used every tactic, and believe me, I want those workers to have a right to take sick leave if they're going to be producing food that I'm going to buy in a grocery store.
I heard somebody say the other day, man, the owners must be thinking right now, I wish I wouldn't have built this company in the Menominee Valley. I should have built it out in Hartford or Franklin or somewhere else.
They'd still have to follow the law.
I actually happen to know the owners. I've known them since they were teenagers. I taught them in high school.
They're very good people.
They are very good people. Their family business, which had been right down off of North Avenue, it was a long-standing, properly run business. They're a family of immigrants. They have immigrants now that make up part of their immediate family, those who are the current owners. And so I think it really hits to the quick for them to be accused of untoward efforts to deny people the opportunity to unionize. I don't think that's where it's at all. I do believe, though, that those workers that were there have the right to unionize. Those workers that are there illegally should be properly turned over to the authorities, or they shouldn't be on their payroll. They shouldn't be hired in the first place. So that's where you get caught up with the tactics that are being used that makes it a public relations nightmare for the current ownership. Because when they do what they're legally supposed to do, that becomes an opportunity for those who want to unionize to say, look at what they're doing here with their workforce. They're treating them unfairly. They're trying to send them back. And of course, public opinion then doesn't fall on their side. But if you look at the history, the track record of that company and the family that has owned that company, operated that company well and successfully, that simply is not the case of where they have done anything, I believe, that's not just illegal, but
Do the workers have
showing
sick
any
leave?
animosity
Do the
towards
workers
those workers?
have sick leave? I'm not saying the owners aren't good people.
The workers do have sick leave.
They do not.
They have sick leave.
No, they don't.
For those, yes, they do have sick leave. They give them.
You're wrong about that.
Well, the full-time workers.
And they said if people miss more than 2 or 3 days, which they won't be paid for because they're sick, they'll be fired.
Kevin,
Well, just wait till the new health care law kicks in and see how many employees a lot of these companies are going to dismiss because they don't want to fall in the over 50 rule.
Kevin, Tom Barrett brags all the time about all he's done to rebuild the Menominee Valley. Should he be more vocal about this specific instance?
He should be more vocal about this and many other issues, but he's not. He's the face on the milk carton. I echo everything you've said about the owners, and they do come from an immigrant family. I've actually been in the plant. It's pristine, it's clean, it's well run, it's a smooth operating. I haven't seen any unhappy workers there. I think it's sadly unfortunate that a militant immigration, pro-illegal immigration group has gone in and riled up these workers.
Riled up those workers.
And have gotten them to the point where they're out there, striking and so forth. It's very unfortunate because this really good corporate citizen, this family, has gone into an area that nobody wanted to touch.
Right.
Put up this beautiful, beautiful facility, provided jobs. This was a blighted area.
They've anchored the corner of revitalization in the Menominee Valley.
And I don't think they're nearly as unfair as they've been portrayed here tonight.
Are they taking advantage of the workers, Denise?
I don't know that they are necessarily taking advantage of the workers, but I think the situation is one that allows them to have some advantages over what the workers have. Let's get a couple things clear. I think we all agree that the Palermos are nice people. They've done nice, good things in the civic area. They went into an area that nobody wanted to go into. They built a plant that brought jobs in. All that's true, but that's not the issue. The issue is whether or not these workers have been afforded the appropriate rights to decide if they want to be part of a union. And let's also clear up this issue regarding Voices de la Frontera. If you take a look at the information that they are able to provide, these meetings went back with workers coming to them, not Voices seeking out the workers. The workers coming to Voices to ask for help. This dates back to 2008. This is not a new issue. It's an issue that's been going on for many years and has reached a boiling point, at least frustration on the part of workers, where now you have people who are walking off the job, people are quitting, and a month-long protest in front of the plant. What needs to happen is the ability for both the company and the workers to be able to have a place where they can sit down together. Maybe Voices isn't the group to do it at this point, but to sit down together and say, how do we follow the law?
But immigrants come to Voices because they fight for them, because they stand up for them, and your characterization of them was absolutely false, and that
they have always
unfair.
They have always sympathized with illegal immigrants.
It's not sympathizing with people. It's like saying
I'm putting it lightly.
It's like saying if I agree that people should work, that I sympathize with business people. That's not what this is about. They're not sympathizing with anybody.
Well,
they are an organization. They're an organization.
Stay on the job and try to sit down with management and work things out rather than pick up a picket sign.
Because they've tried to do that for 4 years and it hasn't worked. They've done this for 4 years and it has not worked. Their efforts with the company to date have not been.
They've hung around at a job that is so terrible, but they've still hung around. I thought it's so terrible.
If you are an unskilled worker, unlike one of us, what ability do you have to find jobs that meet your skills?
Most people do.
Next topic. After years of discussions and failed proposals, the Milwaukee Common Council is expected next week to give the go-ahead for demolition crews to finally take down the old Sydney Hih buildings in the mostly vacant Park East land. Historic preservationists say that is a huge mistake. The buildings are old, they are iconic, but are they really historic, Joel?
It's interesting. The history that people are arguing over goes back to like the 80s.
Fischer is historic.
The 1980s, because there were some bands that played there. Actually, I used to go to that club in the basement, and I look back on that experience, and I feel lucky. It was called the Mine Shaft then, and I feel lucky that I made it out alive, having gone there, because every once in a while they try to torch the building.
Well,
and
there's reason right there to save the place. I'm changing my mind.
They always tried to burn it from the top down instead of the bottom, and they messed that up. I read the stories that have been written in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel by an art critic, actually, who wasn't here during the time when this golden age, they call it, of Sydney Hih. The place was a dump, and it was derelicts and junkies hung out there. I mean, it was not, some treasure that it's going to be terrible to lose. It's been a blight in the downtown area for quite a long time.
Too often the historic people do get confused, I think, and say, just because something is very, very old, that makes it historic. It might just be old and run down.
Well, then Joel McNally is historic.
This is the case where it is old and run down. And Joel's right. Back in the 80s, it wasn't great shakes either. It's a building that does not have a true historic purpose. let's not put this in the same category as the Pabst
Graceland?
Mansion. It's not. It's an old building that if it had any historic value, it was lost years ago the way it cut it up to make, let's see, apartments. There were shops there at one point in time.
There were some restaurants that I wouldn't want to eat in.
It's very true. So, I mean, it doesn't have any historic value.
When you talk about great tourist attractions
the only value might be, it might actually be the building in the city that's had the most fires.
Yeah. When you talk about great tourist attractions, this doesn't really make the list.
No.
And seriously, what bothers me is that you always have this very small, vocal minority that likes to stand in the way of progress. I mean, seriously, I bet a lot of people watching, most of the people watching us tonight, have no idea what Sydney Hih is,
Right.
or if
they've seen it,
or
yeah.
if they do know, care. We need to get rid of it so that we can get out of this Flintstones mentality and go to the Jetsons and develop and create facilities that will boost our economy and create jobs.
You know,
But the realism, though, is that there are a lot of
complaining.
There are a lot of buildings in this community that have been torn down that were historic. So I think there is a feeling that we better be very careful before we take something down. Like there was a couple on the Marquette University campus that was.
I remember the Knights of Columbus
Frank Lloyd
that was
Wright
torn
building
down.
on
Right.
7th and Highland was
Right.
torn down. It's a bit different.
Certainly, and they had far better pedigree than this building has. There were times when I almost wanted to ask the question, what would Whitney Gould say? And she's as much a relic as that building is.
She'd be protesting right alongside.
She just might.
To keep the damn thing.
At the end of the day, though, what
She loved to do
what investors, and they've certainly had enough time for enough people who know how to convert those kinds of properties into something that's profitable, that would preserve that history, if that's what they want to try to preserve, or at least the facade of the building, if that's what they're attempting to preserve. There are people smart enough in this town who have taken a look, had figured it out, and realized you can't.
Sydney Hih once stood
here. You can't do it. That's right. Just like we've got markers all over the place. Abe Lincoln was here.
It was called the Sydney Hih building because Sidney Eisenberg at one point in time was the owner. I mean, the name of it doesn't even have a long historical.
Exactly.
You know.
Well, where'd the high part come from?
Where do you think?
Sydney was high. The historical preservation operation has given enough time for this to be figured out, and I think the Common Council is about to do the right thing. When it went through the zoning committee, they're about to do the right thing and allow that building to be torn down and open up that parcel of land so that more creative things can be done.
Are we ever going to do something with that Parkes corridor?
That's right.
Or are we going to just let it
stay a parking lot
years and years and years to come?
All right.
I think we're done.
Some more thoughts.
All of us.
You're done.
We're all done.
Some more thoughts now on the healthcare decision from Rick Horowitz. He's not just a political junkie, you know. He's also the only one of us who ever had a JD after his name. Rick.
It's been a long time since law school, trying to unravel complicated Supreme Court decisions. I figured this one was worth the effort, all 193 pages of it. So, 9 members of the court, how about 9 quick reactions? Reaction number 1, Obama won the case, a huge win, but a narrow win. Right after the decision came out, I put up a quick tweet. Roberts gives Obama the 5th vote he needs to uphold the mandate, I wrote, but he narrows the scope of the Commerce Clause. 193 pages later, I'm sticking to that. Plus this, reaction number 2. Roberts also narrowed the scope of Congress's spending powers and the Constitution's necessary and proper clause. These are conservative, limited government positions he took, and they could mean some very conservative decisions down the road. Number 3, thoughtful conservatives, I'm thinking George Will, Charles Krauthammer, some others, noticed that. That's why their comments have been restrained, even positive. They know Roberts gave them plenty to work with. Number 4, less thoughtful conservatives, I'm thinking, well, where do we start? Less thoughtful conservatives missed that. That's why they're calling Roberts a sellout, a turncoat, and the decision a disaster. Number 5, cheer up, less thoughtful conservatives. Sure, millions of uninsured people will now be able to get insurance, and kids with pre-existing conditions won't be denied vital care, and insurance companies won't be able to drop people when they get sick. But it's not all bad news. At least you were able to stick it to the Attorney General. Contempt of Congress. He wasn't in contempt of this Congress. Number 6, the latest screech from the TPTT, the Tea Party temper tantrum, is to call the law the biggest tax increase in history, which just proves they're even worse at math than they are at constitutional law. Number 7, Justice Roberts did uphold the individual mandate as a tax and a perfectly legitimate use of Congress's taxing power. But if it hadn't been taxes, the diehards would have found something else. The decision came down on a Thursday. It doesn't count if it's a Thursday. Number 8, Mitt Romney and his pals on Capitol Hill have vowed to keep fighting on. Very dedicated. Kind of like those Japanese soldiers still living in caves 10 years after World War II. And reaction number 9, a constitutional principle I didn't have to go to law school to learn. Get over it.
Well, thank you, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and have an absolutely wonderful 4th of July. We're done! We're done!